Have you ever asked yourself, why does it feel like no matter how hard I try, I keep waking up in the same life, facing the same struggles, fighting the same invisible battles year after year? Tonight on The Hearts of Men, the first episode of the new year, we're pulling back the curtain on a force subtle, so silent, it's been shaping your destiny without you even knowing. It's not your lack of effort. It's not your lack of faith. It's not even your circumstance. It's something far more insidious: mindset creep. Right now, science tells us that 95% of your thoughts, your choices, your very actions are not under your conscious control. 95%. Imagine that. It's like living your life on autopilot with an invisible hand steering you back to the same old patterns, the same old pains, the same old reality, no matter how desperately you want to break free. This is the secret saboteur, the silent assassin of your dreams. The reason you can read every book, pray every prayer, make every resolution, and still find yourself stuck in the same place. But here's the truth the world doesn't want you to know: the same unconscious force that's been working against you can become your greatest ally. As Dr. Wayne Dyer, I got to take my time when I say that, once said, you create your thoughts create your intentions, and your intentions create your reality. The Bible gave us a blueprint over 2,000 years ago by instructing us to renew our minds. Tonight, we're going to expose every hidden program running in your mind. We'll show you how to spot mindset creep the moment it strikes and how to turn it into the fuel to fuel your greatest transformation. Because life is not meant to be a stagnant cycle. It's a beautiful progressive journey, one where you're called to grow, to become the conscious creator of your reality. So, if you're tired of living the same year on repeat, if you're ready to break free from the invisible chains holding you back, if you're prepared to step into the extraordinary destiny that's waiting for you, stay with us. The next few minutes could change everything. Welcome to the Hearts of Men, where your opportunity to break free from mindset creep begins in
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
All right. As always, we like to, you can bring me back down now. We like to always start off and, we like to kind of like make sure that everybody's on the same sheet of music. And so the first thing that I want to kind of expose to everybody is the concept of mindset creep. Now, mindset creep itself is a gradual, often unnoticed shift or expansion in our beliefs, attitudes, or self concept over time. This process usually happens without your conscious awareness, causing you to either revert to old limiting patterns or to broaden what you consider a problem or limitation in your mindset. In other words, mindset creep is when your mental framework drifts, sometimes toward a greater self doubt, sometimes toward over pathologizing normal experiences, despite your best efforts to change and grow. This phenomenon is driven by the brain's tendency to default to automatic habitual thinking, reinforced by cognitive biases and the brain's default mode network. When you're not intentionally renewing your mind, the patterns can quietly resurface, making it easy to slip back into what is familiar. Now, I want everybody to imagine this because I kind of like want to give a real quick example. Imagine you've committed to adopting a growth mindset, believing that you can improve your skills through effort and learning. At first, you are energized and optimistic, viewing setbacks as opportunities. But as time passes, challenges mount. You unconsciously start interpreting even minor mistakes as signs that you're not good enough, a belief you thought you left behind. Without realizing it, your mindset has crept back towards a more fixed, limiting perspective, and you find yourself stuck in the same old cycle of self doubt. Now, it's interesting within ourselves. Have you guys ever heard of this or experienced it yourself?
I personally have not, until I saw the title. I've definitely heard of both of these words, but not together. So I'm definitely looking forward to how this conversation is going.
Yeah. What about you, son of Timothy?
Um, I don't. I've heard of the concept. I don't know as far as like the language used to describe it. I don't know if I've heard it this way, but I've heard of the concept
Okay.
before.
Just in a different terms.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, cool, not a problem. For those of you who don't know, I have a project management background. That's kind of like how we got to this point. When you look at stuff like scope creep, it's when you have a scope of work, but then you start leaking outside of that scope of work and start doing other things as well. A little different in nature, but kind of along the same path. So we're going to start off real quick with the science of unconscious drift. Now, mindset creep happens because our brains default to automatic habitual patterns when we're not consciously directing our thoughts. I'll say that part again. When we're not consciously directing our thoughts, causing us to drift back to familiar mental territories. And again, an example is a man is literally what he thinks, his character being the complete sum of all his thoughts. James Allen. Now, if you've never read that book, it's a really good book, short read. It's called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Great book. Statistically speaking, 95% of our thoughts are repetitive and unconscious. Mindfulness practices can reduce this automatic thinking by up to 40%. Now, gentlemen, that being said, first question I have for you, and this is something that you may have to think outside the box a little bit, not assuming that you've ever experienced this, but when you catch yourself thinking the same old thoughts, what does that reveal about the gap between your desired identity and your current mental program? And I'll ask this question again just to give you guys just a little bit more time to process it. The question is, when you catch yourself thinking the same old thoughts, what does that reveal about the gap between your desired identity and your current mental programming?
I'll start it. I will say, when I think about this, one of the things that I think about is, how can I put it? Growth. And what I mean by that is, I've heard a long time ago that sometimes, especially when we're working on things, we at some point need to be tested to see if whatever we are working on, seeing if we're growing. So if I'm working on having conversations and trying to keep my mouth shut while Gaddy is talking to me versus interrupting and trying to respond instead of listening to what he says, the only way I'm going to know that I'm getting better at that is if I'm in conversations with people to see if I'm growing. Now, to the question, when you catch yourself thinking the same old thoughts, what does that reveal about the gap between your desired identity and your current mental programming? I think one of the things that it may reveal is that you may have some growth to do in certain areas if the old thoughts are negative and or it is something that you're working on. So again, if I'm working on a particular thing and then I keep thinking about whatever it is from the past, then it's revealing to me that, hey, I may still have some work to, I may still have some work. If I experienced DV when I was young, with my spouse or something like that, and then every time, I hear a loud bang or I hear a loud noise or my spouse raise their voice, I'm triggered or I'm alarmed or thinking about, hey, what happened back there? Or I'm thinking about these thoughts about, whatever. So I think sometimes just when you catch yourself just thinking about anything, that may be negative or from the past, it may just be an indicator that there may be something that may need to be addressed in your life. That's kind of my 2 cents.
Whew. The same old thoughts. The gap. What does it say about the gap between desired identity and current mental program? It tells me that I am not actively engaged in preparing my mind to head towards that desired identity. That's telling me that I'm still feeding my mind and feeding my brain the things of the man I'm trying to get rid of. It tells me that I have an addiction to who I am versus that may be stronger than my desire to get to where I'm going. It's a few answers that's coming to my mind for this one, because it's like I'm hope, or it could be, and I say it. I use the word addiction because I even look at my life. I'm like, man, yeah, people back at home with people that are still aware or doing the same stuff that I was doing growing up can probably look at me and say, "Man, look how far you come." And some of the adults that told me, "I don't know where you headed, but it ain't the right way," can come back to me and say, "Man, I'm so proud of you." But I look at my life and I'm like, it could be so much more if I had just dumped some of these mindsets a lot earlier. If I had dumped some of this defeated mindset so many years earlier, I could have made some of the right decisions. If I didn't think everybody was out to get me, I could have made the right choices to do this. I, because that's a mindset. Those are mindsets I grew up with that were hard to let go, and I was addicted to thinking that everybody that knocked on my door, they trying to upsell me on something, and I need to run them off. Run them off. Might be a deal. Maybe might be worth listening to. Never, but that mindset I'm addicted to. Like I was trained that way so long, so much. That concept, thinking that we treat everybody like we treat the something witnesses. I ain't gonna call nobody out on here. When they come knock on our door, you know. So I think about that, and I look at even some of my family members' behavior. Sometimes I'm like, they're addicted to this. Like, even when they make the right move to get out of certain lifestyles, they bring it and invite it back into their new situation because that mindset is what they're addicted to. And so, yeah, you may change your location, but you're still not fully becoming the person you're trying to become because you're addicted to some of these mindsets that you can't let go and is wondering, how do I end up back here?
See, I like where you guys are going. So I want to kind of peel that back just a little bit more because, like, I like to think about it like this: give if I just listen to what you guys say, and I turn back the hands of time. Let's go back about 35 years. I say that. Turn back the hands of time about 35 years ago. Get it? Not a word. Not a word. And if I knew then what you guys are talking about now, right? If I knew then those things, then I could have, like, Unc said, I could have done the work. Like you just said, I could have identified some of those addictive mindset that keeps me stuck in these unhealthy patterns. So when we start talking about these things, let's go back to Garfield first, because you made mention about doing some work. It may identify some work that I need to do. What type of work are you making mention of, if you don't mind sharing that with us?
All right. So as Gaddy was talking, and I started getting off on my own thought process. So I remember years ago, um, oh, how can I say this? Because my wife may be watching. Um, in the past, right? So I wasn't always. I've been with this current wife for 11 years, but in the past, I had a whole different life, and I would just say that Um, I did used to do a lot of hunting back in the day, right? So what happened is down the road, I would still catch myself sitting around thinking about hunting, even though I may have been with somebody. It's just like, oh, well, I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about, what I used to say, how I used to talk, pick up lines, just sitting around almost daydreaming or sitting back thinking about some of these old thoughts that I used to have when I was back in the club back in 95. You know what I'm saying? This is, years down the road. And I'm like, why am I still having these thoughts? Well, the thing about it was at some point I wanted to turn and I didn't want to be that person, but I was still finding myself thinking about these things. So again, and I hope I'm answering your question is, you know, some of those things kind of were identified as like, hey, this is an indicator that this is an area in your life that you may need to work on. There is an issue, there's something that's there. Um, an issue, something that you may have been struggling with, whatever that thing may be. And then, like I said, you identify it and then you come up with some sort of solution or some kind of way to fix yourself because that's not who I wanted to be. But sometimes, because that's who I spent a lot of years being that person, sometimes those thoughts would still come up. And then I would indulge just because I really wasn't paying attention. I may have just been sitting around. I may have been on a walk, and then just one something may trigger me. Something may trigger a thought in my head, and then next thing you know, it's just going. So those are some of the things, and I hope I answered the question. If not, I'll spin back around.
No, I like that. I like that. Let's kind of transition to Gaddy real quick because he made mention of some addictive mindsets, and
Mhm.
one can see the example that you gave as being an addictive mindset, especially for young men. When you look at TV, you look at videos and things of that nature, and they overpopularize and glamorize sex. Sex sells. We've heard that all before. So that by itself can be an addictive mindset. Gaddy, if you don't mind kind of help us to understand some other addictive mindsets that you know that young men might be struggling with.
Whew. And this one is a close to home mindset, right? And for me, or close to home conversation for me, because coming out of New York and going into the military, I had a street mindset. It was I had to always keep guard for everybody. Don't trust nobody. Everybody's out for a scheme, and everybody has a, you know, it's these things. Some of these things that we take with us from home. Whether it's environmental because of where you're from or just who raised you, right? Or there's certain things and behaviors and mindsets. Uh, so and for me that is hard. I could pinpoint quite a few of them based upon where I'm from, you know, but dealing with dealing with upbringing and moving forward, because we're talking, this question to me sounds like we're moving forward into, trying to transition from where I'm at to where I'm going. And 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 the problem, and I think some of the things that hold us back, yes, we talk about the I know it's a trigger word on here, so we talk about the corn, you know um but remember, we always talk about, we I got to work 10 times harder and be 10 times smarter and be, you know, that's a mindset that is hard to let go. That because of what I look like, everyone is going to hold me down and try to keep me from where I'm going. So these things sometimes build an exterior in us that traps us. I don't even want to say an exterior, but an interior, because we're talking about our mind, but it builds a wall in our mind that keeps us from being able to go forward. So it's like, I notice when I click on YouTube on my phone and I see 4 different videos, which one am I more prone to click? Right? If I got this money video right here, but I got this video of these dudes or these girls or whatever arguing and fighting in the street, because that's what I grew up around. I'm like, let me see these crazy jokers fighting in the street. I click on that for entertainment value, but I could have been clicking on this one to elevate my finance, because I've been listening to this financial class on YouTube, or this investment class. I could have been doing this mindset video talking about breaking free from mindset creep, but I clicked on the video that was more entertaining. And so that's kind of like the concept I'm talking about when I talk about addictive behavior. It's just those things, and I think we all have it, and some of us just fight better, but it's those things that are just holding on to our coattail while we trying to move forward, that we should just leave back there.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you guys for going into that because I do not disagree with anything you said. As I'm looking at this question, I think I want to start. And for those of you who participate in Bible study, this is going to sound familiar. I want to kind of do the connection between the notion of like your thoughts and your identity, because when you may not realize it, but you have a concept of who you are. And in most cases, that concept was given to you. That concept was given to you a lot of times at a very young age, right? And then that concept kind of created your identity itself. So the concept came first, then the identity, then you have a posture. Like that's just, once I have these things, that concept and that identity, then I posture myself according to that. And then I express myself going forward. So now when I look at these thoughts that I'm having, these thoughts that may keep recycling over and over and over again, and I'm loving what everybody's put in the comments because I'm seeing some amazing things like imposter syndrome, impulsivity, and so forth and so on. Those things tend to stem from a aspect of my identity, how I see myself, and then The other aspect of it is how I believe other people see me. So esteem and all of that other great stuff. And I think that's important for us to process and understand, because the thoughts that I think reveal the thing that I understand about myself, or something that I understand about myself. So once I understand these thoughts take place, imposter syndrome, once I understand wanting to be accepted take place, and all of these great and wonderful things, then I have to go back and understand where does that thought stem from? Was it something that was passed down to me from my parents? I have to work twice as hard and twice as smart, be twice as smart. Or was it something I adopted in the schoolyard because of the way, because kids can be cruel, man, because of how my friends treated me and I didn't feel like I measured up. So all of those things could be in the place. And I think when we look at this question, it really is revealing. And I want everybody who's hearing this, I want them to kind of think about like the most unwanted dominant thought that you have, whether it is imposter syndrome, whether it is impulsivity, whether it is just wanting to be accepted, right? Or transition from the thought into the expression of yourself. And now I'm looking at blind spotting, the expression of yourself that somebody has revealed to you that you may not necessarily like. And then think into that and ask yourself, where does that come from? And I think you'll learn something more about yourself than what you were consciously aware of, because at the end of the day, I don't care who you are, your thoughts come from your concept of who you are, or your identity as you understand it to be. Any other thoughts, comments, or feedback based upon anything I just said?
Yes. I think I have a question, and maybe in response to Queen V's comment. Um, it was, when you catch yourself thinking the same thought, it means you have not moved on from the past, and you need to stop and think about why you cannot transform and need to move forward. So when I think about that, I'm thinking about that example that I gave about myself. So with that example that I'm saying, that I spoke about earlier, if I spend if I was a certain way, let's say whatever many years ago, and then it's been, let's say, 6 years down the road, and I haven't really had any of these thoughts, and then something comes to me, and I spend 30 seconds or a minute dwelling on it, then I kind of come to and be like, yo, what the heck you thinking about, bro? This ain't you. Does, you know what I mean? Does that mean that I have not moved on, or is that just something just comes with the territory, and that, you know, because it was an habit or an addiction or something in the past, that I'm always going to be confronted, or I'm always going to be triggered, or I may always have a small moment of, I don't necessarily want to say relapse, but when you talked about the 95% kind of being on autopilot, that's a lot of time for automatic thoughts to happen. So does that kind of mean, you know what I mean? Does that mean that I'm dwelling, that I haven't moved on, or does it just mean that for that time and space, that's just where I'm at? Because, even when I was having those thoughts, it wasn't like I was wanting to go out there and start hunting. It was just in the moment, like I said, I may be walking or doing something, and my mind just goes there for a short amount of time, a short period. So what do you think about that? Is that, you know what I'm saying? I think I asked the question twice, so I ain't gonna answer it again.
There was I can't remember which rapper, but he was definitely a poet, and he just said there's levels to this. I think it was a battle or something. I think it was probably Nas said it in an interview, but they said there's levels to this, and I don't think that it's just like, because it's kind of like when I said I think we all have that thing that pulls out our coattails sometimes. I think it's not realistic to say every thought from my past will never come up again. You know, it did, and I believe that there's a thing called nostalgia. There's a smell. There's a a view. There's a
Yeah,
image.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
a feeling. A song come on when I'm riding in the car with the window down that brings back a memory, brings
yeah.
back a thought. And so those thoughts come up because they're there. But I think we're talking more of when it's the thoughts that we can't let go of that are trapping us from where we're trying to go. And those are the things that are more habitual, not just that just comes up at the moment.
Absolutely. That's why I said predominant. Your dominant thoughts, right?
Okay.
I have a I have a very interesting analogy that I tend to use. And it doesn't sound good, but that don't mean it's not right. A crackhead is always going to be a crackhead until they go back and face that environment and realize they no longer have the thirst for it. Just
Mm.
because I separate myself from the thing does not necessarily mean I'm delivered from the thing. It's just
Mhm.
means that I have not yet put myself back in that environment to be tempted by that thing. So when we look at these things, and I'm just going to use the example that you use, right? Um, the example that you gave is a very vivid example, and most young men can relate to that, right? That's where the analogy, what was the whole acronym about Adidas? All day long I think about sex. Yeah, that's where that came from. That's what we used to call it back then. And when you're younger, that's what you do. Like, you're plotting on it. I'm just gonna call a spade a spade. But at some point you make that transition, and it's no longer the all day long aspect of it. Now, are there times that you have those thoughts? Sure, but now what do you do with it? That determines what happens, like the expression aspect of it, right? What do I do with that thought? Do I recognize this a thought that I used to have? I cast that thought away and I get back on, the thing that I'm called to do? Or is it that I still sit around and I still ponder and think about and plot on at the grand young age of 50, however, old that person is, right? If that's what you're doing in your 50s, you need to go sit on somebody's couch and drink some tea and have a conversation. I'm just keeping it
Mhm.
real. So to your question, I love the question. I love Gaddy's response, that there are layers to it. You have to understand, like, your subconscious memory holds so much data that you're not going to ever forget the things that you ever been through in your life. You don't forget
Yeah.
any experience. It's not in your conscious mind. However, when something reminds you of it, you then go back to the shelf, take it off the shelf, and unpack it, like those smells and in the sight, or an old song. You know what I'm saying? I was just, right before we got started, I was listening to what was it, Boogie Down Productions.
EDC.
Yeah, I can't remember the song of it now, the name of the song, but all of the lyrics to the song came back, and that song came out in 1988. That's
Mm.
how powerful your subconscious mind is, right? I think it's called Philosopher. So when you look at that, you don't forget any of your experiences. You don't forget any of those ideas, those thoughts, and things of that nature that used to plague your mind. And going back to what Gaddy said, were more so addictive in nature. But at a certain point, you transition. And then when those thoughts come up, you don't necessarily make them dominant thoughts anymore. You recognize that, yeah, I used to be that. I'm not that anymore. Go away.
Yeah. I like dominant thought and I like addiction.
Yeah,
I like
man.
how all everything that came together. So
Absolutely. Did I answer your question? I mean, did we answer your question?
absolutely.
Okay.
You
Cool
got
beans.
mine.
Cool beans. Real quick, I want to make sure that I am again thanking everybody for all of the comments that they're putting in, because again, I want you to realize that we're seeing them, so keep them coming. Atlas Keys to Keys Realtor said, I think it reveals one may be believing a lie and fixed mindset. And a lot of that could be true. Some of the things that we have were given to us, and we did not question it whatsoever. We didn't question the assumptions. We didn't question the person that gave it to us. We just accepted it, and then that became a foundational thought. And a lot of the things that we do are rooted in that. So that's a great point. Miss Charlotte Jordan said, there may be a struggle going on within me. Absolutely. His divine appointment said it could also be the Holy Spirit is helping us to move or apply action to the thoughts. The final product will be delivered by the Holy Spirit. I agree, but I don't think we're that far yet. Um, then Keys Atlas Keys to Keys Realty said imposter syndrome. The rebirth the Nick made mention of impulsivity. Then his divine appointment made mention of wanting to be accepted. And I think as we hear these things, right, I think there's not a person who can't relate to them at some shape, form, or fashion. We've related to these things at some point in our life, and men go through them as well. I don't want any male out there to hear it and hear that, I just want to belong. That's just a woman thing. No, it's not. Men have that as well, right? And we all have a desire to be connected to some shape. So I just wanted to make sure I say that. Next question, because we made mention of this 95%, right? if 95% of your thoughts are running on autopilot, what percentage of your transformation efforts are actually under your conscious control? Okay. Unc say 5.
5%. I'm going with 5.
Okay. Gad, you disagree with that?
Um, so can we bring it back up real quick? I see. Because it's the word of your transformation efforts are actually under your conscious control. I think if I am in the process of trying to transform myself, it starts with transforming my mind, right? Then I think that number goes down because now I am more conscious of the thoughts that are coming across, right? And so when they come across, I like uh, keys to keys, Atlas keys to keys realty put in the comments that, a scripture that I had. I was trying to remember it too while I was saying it.
It's a tongue twister, man.
2 Corinthians 10:5. And and you don't have to, even if you don't read the entire verse, the beginning of it says, cast down imaginations, casting down thoughts, casting down, the things that are working in contrary to where you're going, right? And so it says, and every high thing that exalted itself against the knowledge of God. For some of us, like we talked about, sometimes it's that music. Sometimes it's our whatever our guilty pleasures are. Might be the books you like to read, the videos you like to watch. It might be the podcast you listen to. But if those things are taking me in the opposite direction of where my transformation is leading me, all right, according to the scripture, that's to the knowledge of God, I got to bring it into captivity. And so in doing that, I think, I don't know what that number would be, but I think it decreases the number of or the percentage of the thoughts that are just running on autopilot, because now I am training myself to think differently, so that when my mind is on autopilot, the thoughts that come through my mind are not the same as they were yesterday. I hope that makes sense.
Ooh, that boy is on to something, y'all. He's on to something. Garfield, I'm with you, bro. It seems like 5% is the obvious right answer from a mathematical standpoint. But in reality, the answer is 0, because we're talking transformation, like Gaddy made mention of. And so remember, I got a 5%, like out of the 100% of, mindset, conscious and subconscious, right? Out of the 5%, that's my conscious mindset. That's how I'm literally living my life. So sure, when you look at my subconscious, which is 95%, I do that on autopilot, and you guys know it. You guys drive to work all day and you pretty much take the same route. You know what I'm saying? You go to lunch, you might eat the same thing for lunch, hang out with the same people, whatever the case may be. You're subconsciously doing these things. You get up and walk, a particular way, direction in your house. You're probably doing the exact same thing. If you don't have a mailbox in your front yard, you got a mailbox down the street. You probably do it the exact same way, whether you want to walk and get your steps in, or whether you want to get your little scooter and ride down there. However you go about doing it, we are absolutely, thank you, you took the words out of my mouth. I was just about to say that. We're absolutely creatures of habit. But we're talking transformation. It's a metamorphosis that is taking place. That's without my control. And in order for that to happen, it requires something on the outside to happen to me, so that it now changes me to such a degree that now it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I know a lot of times we think about transformation and we think about, what do you call it? A caterpillar changing into a butterfly. That's a caterpillar with legs and wings. It didn't go through a transformation, it went through a transition. That's it. He got legs and he got wings, but it's still a caterpillar. He can walk and fly now. He ain't got to crawl. So I think when we look at this transformation, that's the thing that moves us into this aspect of a new creature, to where I don't even respond the same anymore. I don't even act the same. In fact, you look at me now, I may even walk and talk differently This is kind of like how when you guys go back home after being gone for 10, 15, 20 years, and you see some of your old friends and they're like, man, you don't even act like you used to. That was 15, 20 years ago. You know how much outside influence that has happened to me since then? Like, surely there has been some change in me since then. So it's like those are the things that and if somebody see it differently, by all means say so. I'm 100% open to hearing that.
I don't know. I said 5, and then I changed my answer to 100. But then as just listening, it just makes me go deeper or, have more questions and, wanna understand more. So, what percent of transformation efforts are actually under your conscious control? It seems like the 5% at some point has control over the 95. Now, here's what I mean. I believe that at some point and this is roll with me. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to come out at the end, but I'm kind of talking through this thing. So if my 5%, if I'm just trying to be better, I'm trying to make the 95% better. So part of that 95% is, whatever, driving to work. Well, if I spend that 5% in practicing the 5% of consciousness, practicing safe driving habits, making sure I'm keeping a certain amount of space between myself and cars, stopping at stoplights, putting my blinker on, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, those conscious things that I'm thinking about in the 5% become the 95. That's what I'm thinking. And becomes the things that I habitually do and how I do the things habitually that I do every single day. Like brush my teeth, take a shower, make the bed, all of the other things like that. So I think that where I'm thinking is the 5% eventually controls the 100% because it controls and dictates the other 95%. The conscious, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm somewhere in here just like the 5%, the 95% is of habits are based off the 5% of the conscious things that we've been doing, and then those things transition over to the things that we do habitually and how well we do or how not well we do the things habitually. I don't know, but I don't know. I feel like, or I not feel like, I think that 5% of consciousness controls a lot of that 95%, how we operate in the 95. What do y'all like? Am I way off? Like, help
Gad, you
me
want to
out.
go first?
Huh?
You want to go first? Because I'm ready.
You ready?
I'm ready. So if you want to go first, by all means, go ahead. Okay.
Yeah.
Really, it's the other way around. The 95%
Okay.
shows your 5%. Whatever. let's go all the way back because there's the thing that governs your belief. Right? Remember, I started talking about concept, and what was given to you is the concept that you live your life, whatever the case may be. So now we're getting into this thing called belief. What I believe governs what I see and what I take in. So when I look at that, I can give you this book right now. I don't know if you guys can see that. I can give you the book right now. And you can read this book, and there are things that you cannot see in it simply because your subconscious mind governs what you see. Perception and perspective, and perception. So I literally cast my own jaded views on the world based upon my belief system, but I also sift everything that I see in through my own jaded perception, and I see what my subconscious tells me to see. Now, where does my subconscious get the information from? It's what I say. I call it the Yukon. If I go online right now and I start studying Yukons, I look for a 2026 Yukon. I want the stretch SUV. I want all the bells and whistles. I'm studying it. And then when I leave the house, my reticular activating system will say, hey, the human wants to see Yukons. So now as I'm driving down the street, it shows me every Yukon that I actually see, regardless of what I currently drive. It just shows, and that Yukon starts showing up. That's in essence the same thing. So now when I say I want to go read this book and I'm going to change who I am, sure, I'm going to get some information from it, but that's a transition. because I'm slowly progressing in the direction of what I'm reading. But something on the outside is going to have to give me what I tend to call a defibrillator. It's going to have to shock me outside of what I currently know so I can be like, whoa, you got all that out of this book right here? Yes. Well, how did you get that? And I didn't get it because my mindset is different than your mindset. So I'm seeing things differently than how you see it. Ideally, hopefully, I am conditioned based upon my reticular activating system to see the things that every human should see in order for them to go through a massive progression. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Gad. I know you're ready now.
I wish I had went first, so you could have just cleaned up what I said, because you just, everything that was in my head just sounded a lot better when it came out of your mouth. So no, but
Teamwork, bro. Teamwork makes a dream work. You
makes the
think what I
dream
say?
work.
That's how it works.
But I should have threw the assist, because you up there throwing and behind the, reverse. Now, because you definitely hit the train your mind part that I was thinking about. But I didn't know how to, like when you said the 95 controls the 5, I wasn't thinking that. I was actually struggling with that when he said the 5 controls. I was struggling with that because I'm thinking like Coach, you brought up the driving 5 car space behind the car in front of you, but that was a training that took place for you to think that and then even with that, there's a personality trait that is trained in you to do that, because there's some jokers that get on the highway and have to get on your bumper. They can't breathe unless they're trying to run somebody off the road.
New
But
York,
that's the character trait that has trained their mindset to do that. And so, and I like the way you put it when you brought up the book, Coach, because you unlocked everything that I talk to people about when it comes to studying the scriptures. One of my biggest struggles that I had when you go to a new church, and I was in charge of it at one church, but when you go to a new church, they do what they call new members class, right? And in new members class, you could have been in church 30 years, but just because you moved and go to a new church, we got to teach you the doctrines of this church first. I'm training your mind on how to see what we need you to see when you open the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
But when you read Isaiah and he asks, to whom shall he give knowledge and to whom shall he teach doctrines? He says that it is first those who wean off the milk. See, but we give the doctrine first and then we try to wean off the milk. You got to have scripture based knowledge before doctrine comes in. Because if I give you bad doctrine, but that's all you know is the bad doctrine I gave you, it subconsciously causes you to avoid a lot of things that are brought up in the scriptures. And when I tell people some things are written in the scripture, they like, that ain't in there. No, you just couldn't see it the first time. Now that I pointed it out, you could see it. You know how many times I didn't see things in the scripture somebody pointed out, and I'm like, well, that sure enough is in there. But because subconsciously, the way I was taught scripture, I wasn't taught to notice that. And so when we talk about mindset, I think there has to be a retraining. And that's why I kept talking about, what am I putting in? What am I listening to? What am I reading? There has to be a period where I'm feeding myself. I tell my son this all the time. Son, you in 13 different things. I need you to become addicted to one of them. You want to become great. I need you to be so addicted. If it's the violin, be so addicted to this violin that you get on my nerve. Study. And ain't nothing wrong with going over different type of progressions, going over different type of scales. Learn your major, minor scale, your pentatonic scale. Learn your progression. Like, learn how to do this thing by ear. He's great at he picked that thing up like this. But are you crazy about this thing? Because if not, you're not training your mind to get better. You're training your mind to maintain.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I love it. Man, I did not realize. Wow. I just looked at the time, man. I was like, man, it's the first section.
Two questions.
Trivia question for anybody in the comments. I want you to fill in the blanks of what I'm about to say. I'm gonna make a statement. It's coming from the Bible. So you guys put it in the comments, the rest of what it said. Knowest thou what thou readest? I'm gonna ask again. Knowest thou what thou readest? It goes perfectly in line with what we just got finished talking about. That being said, if you have not hit the like button already, hit the like button. Share it with somebody else who you think will benefit from it, because I think we're doing an awesome job on this conversation so far. So the next section is consciousness as the foundation of reality creation. Mindset creep is fundamentally a consciousness problem. When our awareness drops, we unconsciously return to old states of being that recreate familiar circumstances. Neville Goddard said, change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. Individuals with higher trait mindfulness demonstrate 60% less default mode network activity and 35% greater functional connectivity in attention networks. Gentlemen, that being said, if your external world is a mirror of your internal state, what is your current state of reality telling you about the level of consciousness you're actually operating from?
I need to
This
draw a
feels
diagram.
I ask it again. If your external world is a mirror of your internal state, and it is, what is your current reality telling you about the level of consciousness you're actually operating from? And you can generalize it. You don't have to make it specific.
What is your current? It's this part right here. What is your current level of your current reality telling you about the level of consciousness you are actually operating from? This feels loaded. But I'm gonna take a stab in the dark on this one. I do like the idea that my external world is a mirror of my internal state, right? But my reality, and I think it's different for every person, right? Depending on your reality, right? If my reality looks like what I'm leaning for, if my goals are being checked off, then it's telling me that I'm working at a high level of consciousness because I am purposeful and intentional about my movement, about what I'm doing, about my behavior, about how I treat people or whatever the case may be. But I think when we're in that state to where there's no progression and everything just seems normal, because a part of me believes that a lot of us are striving for this ability to live in autopilot and be comfortable, right? But I don't know if that. The more I read and study scripture, the more I believe that that's not it. Like the being uncomfortable is the state that we should be in until we're transformed by Him to a new. Anyway, because that's where He said, "Come into my rest." So that's where we get that rest and that ease. But it tells me that I'm just on autopilot. I think when we just living every day is the same. We're not progressing. We're not moving forward. We're not trying to do new things. We're not trying to get better at something. I think like when I get to the point to where I'm retired, I'm gonna be reading thesauruses. Like, yeah, you know what I mean? I count disability as a retirement. I get that 100%. That's another retirement. So when I get there, like, what's next? All right, I'm gonna be reading dictionaries and thesauruses because I want to get my vocabulary better. I mean, I could do that. I could get my vocabulary better now. I'm not, but I'm just saying, like, when I get to that point to where the goal is no longer financial. The goal is now going to be mental, and and I don't know, education, but I have to get better and strive somewhere spiritually. What am I doing? I think when there's nothing to do, you're working in autopilot. Does that? I feel like I ran off a little bit.
Man, I'm gonna take a jab at it. Let me read this question real quick. If your external world is a mirror of your internal state, what is your current reality telling you about the level of consciousness you're actually operating from? So I wrote down a couple of things. I wrote down a couple of questions, and I got some arrows and some squiggly marks written down here on my paper. Even got a little small diagram. Because I was trying to do look at the external and the mirror part. So I wanted to visualize it. So if my external world is a mirror of my internal state, that brings me, I can't help but to think about when the Bible talks about out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? So what's in us is what's going to come out. So what I got was, it kind of gives me, when it comes to what is my current reality telling me about the level of consciousness I'm actually operating from. um it One of the things I wrote down was, how intentional am I being? Another thing I wrote down, what am I choosing? And then another thing I wrote down was that, like, this whole thing kind of gives me like a live report on exactly how I'm operating, or even my level of consciousness. So if my external world is a mirror of, I don't know, man, I think I'm getting myself jumbled up now. I think I had a way I was going with it. Then I think I started focusing too much on my notes. But I think I got halfway through and I got stuck. But I can't bring it home. I can't find a way to bring it home. It's like I have the thoughts there, but the ending won't come. Like, so I'll start with this, and I'm probably going to repeat some of this, but what's in us, what comes out, and that's what's going to be mirrored to the world or whatever like that. So, and that's what they're going to see. And again, I think with doing that, it lets us consciously know where we're at, in a sense, in our overall life, or where we are internally. And then I'm gonna stop right there, because it won't come together.
I get it, man. I get it. Um,
But I need it to come together though.
I'm gonna start off by saying you are where you are so that you can learn that you may grow. That's ultimately the answer. So when I am observing what my current level of consciousness is revealing to me in my reality, I don't look at it, kind of going back to what Gaddy said. He said it just seems like people are looking for a place to become complacent and just nestle down and get comfortable. But in essence, what it's revealing to me, number one, is where I am, but it's also revealing to me the limitations that I'm imposing upon myself. And if I can understand it to be just that, then it also will reveal to me the gaps that I have in there as well. So, what does that really mean? That means that it's like I love watching, like, some of these mind-blowing movies like Limitless and Interstellar and Inception, like movies like that, because it really challenges the way that you think. And so a lot of the things that those movies have in common is that there was a place of consciousness that these people achieved, and it broadened where they were. Therefore, they can see more and see further. And that's ultimately what it is. So now, when I recognize what my current reality is revealing to me, it is revealing the limitations that I imposed upon myself. So now, going back to the question that I asked previously, and I think somebody actually put it in the chat, about knowest thou what thou readest. Um, it now says, as he said, and he said, how can I, except some man should guide me? And he desired Philip that will come up and sit with him. And then continuing, from that point on, okay, Philip ran thither to him and heard him read the prophet Isaiah and said, understandest thou what thou readest? So she put it backwards. That's okay. But so that's it. So now it means that this is where I'm limited at, but now it should help me to understand that I desire more. So now I have to open myself up so that someone can show me something outside of my current level of awareness. So now at that point, I can see more. I can see wider, I can see further, and I can see more. And I think that's the thing that, when it comes down to this question, that's the thing that should be helping us understand. Any other thoughts, concerns, considerations?
I like that scripture because it comes a desire to before the help can come. Philip could run over there, and Philip can read, can tell them everything. But if there's no desire, he's not gonna receive anything. And so, yeah.
That's
I
what I was
agree too.
How my mom come on here trolling me?
Man, but hey, I was with you. That's why I was like, I felt like I was running on because I couldn't find the landing site.
Couldn't
man.
land it. But I think Coach landed it for me because some of the stuff I talked about, it like kind of gives me like a live report, how intentional I am and like what am I choosing, all things that I'm kind of thinking about. But Coach said it simply. He was talking about you are where you are. You are where you are. And then you talked about limitations and things that we impose on ourselves and the gaps that we have in ourselves. So that right there, and then even how you started off brought this whole thing together and made it a lot clearer. You made it a lot more simpler. I don't know. I was fishing. I was trying to find it.
No, man, you
I,
good.
I knew it was something about awareness of where I am right now. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? I knew that part, but then being able to take it a little further, but I definitely appreciate you for that. Y'all, I like this question. I don't know why, but when I saw it, I didn't like it. But then when I saw it again, I liked it. Because like that was one of them questions. That was a doozy, but I liked how it all came back together.
Good, very good, very good. Greatly
Yeah.
appreciate that. We got to press. We're going to skip the next question and go to the next section, which is why we keep attracting the same experiences. Now,
He rubbing it in.
this is gonna be- mindset creep perpetuates itself through unconscious patterns recognition. We attract and create experiences that match our hidden self concept, not our conscious desires. Let me say this again because if you heard it, you heard it. Mindset creep perpetuates itself through unconscious pattern recognition. We attract and create experiences that match our hidden self concept, not our conscious desire. James Allen said it. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. 70% of organizational and personal transformations fail due to neglecting mindset factors. Growth mindset interventions improve grades for 12,490 students in a national study. Gentlemen, I'm it is what it is. What patterns
It
keep
is what
showing
it is.
up in our relationships, career, or finances that might be revealing your unconscious self concept?
I will.
I could say if, there's one for me that shows up in all of this, which is self-sabotage. Right? I think sometimes we can we come up with these patterns, and some of it comes because we talk about in our community. A lot of these things we weren't taught growing up. We weren't taught, and I'm talking about as a whole, not individually here. I fall into that number. I wasn't taught what healthy relationships look like. I wasn't taught what healthy money management look like. I wasn't taught what my I joke, but I don't. But my daddy was a pimp. I didn't know nothing about no good career. He didn't get a job until I was grown. So, like, there's an aspect of self-sabotage that subconsciously takes place that I had to train myself out of. Like, yes, I desire to be here, but my ability to tell you where you can go and how you can get there supersedes my willingness to keep this job. Like I want to obtain wealth, but my ego, right? My desire to spend money as soon as I see it supersedes my desire to put money aside. Like I had to reteach and still reteaching myself habits. I had to learn what these good habits are, and then I had to do them, force myself into doing some of these things until it just became a part of my pattern.
So let me ask this, because you mentioned self-sabotage, and we just got finished talking about what does my current reality reveal about my subconscious level of awareness. So if I am self-sabotaging, what does that reveal about me?
It sometimes can reveal that I'm afraid of growth. I only know how to exist, and I'm glad someone put it. Someone put in there. I saw it somewhere, or maybe it was last question, but they put in the not ego. It might have been on the last segment.
Do you remember what it was?
The imposter syndrome,
Gotcha.
right? Because I'm so used to operating here, and I so because I think I share with Josh. I think I still suffer with it sometimes. Even every time I get promoted, get put in a room with different people, I'll still be like, I don't belong here. But
Hold up. Now I'm hearing something. Are you telling me that it's possible that I can have imposter syndrome in a relationship?
yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
I just wanted other people to hear it.
And I think in any aspect of our life, we can have imposter syndrome. Sometimes I believe, and it's not about I don't have the education, or it's not about I don't have the experience. It's just sometimes it's like I come from this. Do I belong here? This is what I'm used to. I'm used to operating in this realm or in this frequency that I don't know what it looks like to get better. And so sometimes I turn down good opportunities just because I don't want to. I don't know if I know how to act in the progressive. I got to get this military government job because I don't know if I know how to act in this corporate. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Oh, I do.
but
Yeah, I'm 100% on board. Let me get off. Unc, what you got? Because I was about to go ahead.
About to let it loose, huh? I mean, you already ready for this because soon we went to this thing. The first thing you did, start rubbing them hands together. So, what patterns keep showing up in our relationships, career, or finances that might be revealing your unconscious self concept? So, I kind of wrote down one for all three of these, and then I started thinking about whether or not I could lump all three of these together into one category or to one term or something like that. So when I came down to the relationships, for some reason I went negative, and I think that, you know, whatever it may be, one of the things that it reveals about your unconscious self concept may be what you actually believe. So if some pattern keeps coming up in your relationship, it may be based off of what you believe when it comes to that relationship or whatever that thing may be. When it comes to the career, I wrote down the word expect or expectations. A lot of people in their careers, they're expecting to be a certain way, or I should have got promoted. Why y'all promote coach? You know what I mean? Like, all he do is hang out in the motor pool and hang out in the gym. Like he don't be training those soldiers. You know what I'm saying? So why he get promoted? And then when it comes to finances, I wrote down the word deserve, and then I wrote down my mindset on what I think I deserve. And that is tied into the finances and how someone's finances should be or are, not should be, are. So again, if I'm looking at the questions, if I would have to come up with something, I think what patterns keep showing up in our relationships, career, finances that might be revealing your unconscious self concept. I think if I was to put a word or phrase, it would be it reveals what I believe about all of these different things. Um, so that's kind of where I want to land right there. I want to kind of put a pin right there. I may have something more, but that's where I'm at right now. I think that all of this might be revealing, your unconscious self concept may overall have something to do with overall what I believe about all of these three different things right here.
Man, listen, I love what both of y'all are at in this question. The first thing I want to kind of start off with, and I'm gonna make this statement first before I respond to the question. We need to understand that every principle is a microcosm of itself. So when I look at these principles that govern our existence, I have to learn how to employ them for the betterment of my situation, the people that I'm around, so forth and so on. So when I understand what the law of sacrifice is, right? Giving up something of lesser value for something of a greater value at a later point in time. That's the law of sacrifice. Well, we can clearly see that when it comes down to finances. You invest in your retirement, at least so you think, because that's what you were told years ago. But the problem is that we did not incorporate other principles into that principle and recognize that the the factor that is used that governs all of it is time. Everyone on this panel right now, and people aren't going to process, they're going to be like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but rid yourself of the ability to say that before I say what I'm going to say. If you're that person in your mind that's going to say, I get what you're saying, but don't say it. Just remove that from your thoughts right now. Everybody on this panel is a millionaire. You've made $1 million in your lifetime. The problem is that you've made it over a period of time that looks like that. What happens if you learn to condense time to where you make it in that short amount of time? That's the whole concept of what I'm talking about. When we look at it from that lens, that changes everything. Like, wait a minute. That actually makes sense. Okay, cool. Well, take that whole concept of, time, space, and matter and move from the aspect of talking about finances and let's move into relationship. Because again, whatever relationship you're in, I don't care what it is, whether it's work or whether it's intimate, whatever, what you're seeing is more so revealing to you something that you believe about yourself. So if in this space we're experiencing this and we're experiencing that, we're experiencing this, the question I got to ask myself is why? Why am I experiencing this in this space that I call a relationship? Is it because I do not believe that I belong there? I'm comparing myself to this person. This person has this person's done that, this person's done this, and I'm looking at myself and I can't compete. I can't compare. Oh yeah, by the way, relationship is not a space to where we compete. It is a space where we're supposed to collaborate. So am I looking at it as competition? Because in my mind, when I was younger, I was told I got to be smarter and I got to work harder. And when I go into the space of relationship, I work harder and I try to portray myself as being smarter, but yet that's not my role in the relationship. My role in the relationship is not to be smart. My role in the relationship is not to work hard. My role in the relationship is to collaborate. So when I can look at myself, when I can look at my situation and then recognize the aspect of my situation that I am projecting, then it's like, wait, that actually makes sense because every relationship is rooted in faith. And if we don't understand that, then the problem may not necessarily be the person that you're in relationship with. The problem might be is that you're not hoping for something more positive in the future because that's what faith is all about. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So now, if I am hoping for an outcome in this relationship that is fruitful, that is loving, that is caring, that is actually collaborative, and we actually work with other people in the community and help build them up, so forth and so on, now it requires me to produce the evidence right here and now that I believe out there that's where we're headed. Now, how many times have anybody who ever been around talked to us about relationships in that capacity? Me, zero. Zero. And so when I go back and look at having a failed marriage, I can't blame that person. I got to look at me and say, you know what? I did not know that. No one ever taught me that. No one ever asked me, knowest thou what thou readest? So now I'm in the aspect of looking at what my parents did and trying my best not to recreate that. But guess what? There's this thing called self-concept. And that self-concept had no other alternative but to create the thing that was injected in me. So now where do we go from here? I'll pause right there. No, nothing.
And that wrapped it up for me. Yeah, that was the mic drop.
It's I will say this, and then we're going to move on because of the time. It is mind numbing because y'all know me. I like to patrol the streets when I get bored. I'm just gonna be honest with you. When I finally get the power down for the day and I get bored, I like to patrol the streets of social media and just listen to relationship conversations that take place.
Yeah,
Man,
that'll drain you enough to go to sleep.
man, it is debilitating. It's like I can't even put it in words. And then and then some of them have the audacity to say that they're coaching somebody and then stop it. Don't do that to somebody else's child. Go get some help before you infect somebody else. That's it. And I say that for and I don't mean that in a harsh or disrespectful manner. Do better. That's just it. Do better before you call yourself trying to teach what you don't know. That's just it in a nutshell. Again, greatly appreciate everybody in the comment section. I love what you guys are putting there. Good to see you, Elnita. Welcome as always. I think I seen chosen one earlier. Again, you guys are awesome. Keep them coming. Right, we're loving all the comments. Make sure you hit that like button as well. We need to move on. We need to move on. Let's move on to why trying harder often makes things worse. Why trying harder often make things worse. The more forcefully we try to change the external without addressing consciousness, the stronger our mental elastic band snaps us back to our original state, creating a transformation paradox. Wallace D. Waddle stated, whatever you habitually think yourself to be, that you are. You must form now a greater and better habit. You must form a conception of yourself as a being of limitless power. Interesting enough, consistent mindfulness practices reduce automatic thinking patterns by 40% and increase cortical thickness in areas related to attention and emotional regulation. So the more consistent I have a thought, the more thicker the neural pathway becomes, creating it into a habit. Now, that said, how might our efforts to fix our external life actually be reinforcing the very identity that created those circumstances in the first place?
I think we said it. You, and what we talked about and what you read, it just kind of reveals it. Like if the work is not done on you, and talked about doing the work. If you haven't done the work, you're gonna continue to revert backwards. Like is and it's the same thing I was saying when I'm talking about bringing those old mindsets forward will make you feel like, how did I turn this new situation into the old situation I thought I was getting out of? How did I turn a new location to the same conditions I was in the old? It's because the work wasn't done on you first. Are you renewed? Right, and this is what I love about the work of Christ, that I think a lot of times is ignored because we're focusing on, and I'm not saying here in this circle, but I hear so much people just talk about some Jesus did it, Jesus paid it, Jesus, as if in the concept of I don't have to change because he's already gonna answer for it. Like, but not understanding the work of Christ in you is that he's actually done a work that is hard for you to do yourself, which is he changes you. He gives you the spirit that he cleanses your sins from the point that you receive, but then he begins, and the Hebrew writer says that he perfects the comer thereunto. He begins to work and mold you to where you be. So now when he looks at you, he can say, any man that be in Christ, he's a new creature because I did the work. I know what he looked like. I put him on the potter's wheel, and I begin to mold him. And so we don't. I think I cannot stand preaching that preaches and teaches that you're going to remain the same hot mess, but say Jesus paid it. Yeah, he paid it, and then he changed you. He did a work. That's the sanctification. We stick on justification, but we never talk about sanctification. And so the sanctification comes. That's when the be and the do meet. When you when you brought yourself to him, and he sanctifies you.
Ooh, 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 ooh. Can I add just one little snippet? Like I love everything you said, but and I'm not saying anything you said is wrong, right? But I have a different way of saying the exact same thing you just said. You said that's where the be and the do meets. I would say before I had a renewed mind, I did it the way I best understood I can do it through my level of consciousness. But once he got in me and start doing the work, because the Bible says it is God who worketh in you to will and to do of his good pleasure. So at that point, that's where the be produces the do, not me practicing the same thing I used to do, but now the thing that I do comes from the seat of the be.
How might our efforts to fix our external life actually be reinforcing the very identity that created those circumstances in the first place? I guess I want to go back to my old analogy from kind of earlier when, talked about being out there and hunting and even having thoughts later on down the road about hunting, even though, life had progressed forward. I think sometimes what happened is um, people will often, try to fix things or try to fix and they kind of work on the symptoms versus trying to work on, of digging deeper and finding out the root cause of whatever the symptom may be. And I think sometimes that's the problem. Talk about alcoholics or whatever like that. That's I think a good example is that, they say, well, don't go over Unc's house because Unc alcoholic, he recovering, he on the wagon or whatever like that. So don't drink around him. Unc don't go to the club no more. Don't go to the bar. So instead of me actually fixing and working on the actual things that contribute to the alcoholism, I'm focused on worried about fixing the symptom or not being in a certain place or not being around a certain thing. So I know I didn't get all the way there, but I know what I'm thinking about has something to do when it talks about fixing our external life. I think sometimes what we do is we focus on the symptoms and don't actually get to the meat and potatoes of the actual issue. And I think sometimes when you do that, that can, kind of help create the circumstances that you had in the first place. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I love that. I love all of it actually.
Mm.
I think it was Albert Einstein who said, "This mind has created some problems that this mind can't solve."
Hmm.
And I think that's what we believe that we're doing. So we'll go and look at something on the internet. I'll go and look at a YouTube video, and unless it is a step by step instructions on how to, change my oil in my car, something of that nature. That's not an internal change within me. That's something me picking somebody instructions and going applying it and seeing if it works. It's an instant understanding of that thing.
Hmm.
But when it comes down to fixing something that's internal within me, it's very hard to go and take somebody else's instructions and apply them, and then without no type of interaction with that person, think that it's going to work. Because the only thing I'm going to do, again, perception, jaded lens, as I take it in, my jaded lens, okay, I say it like this. Y'all ain't never got no instructions and say, yeah, I don't need that. I got 7
Hmm.
screws in here. I can do this
Yep.
in 4. You ain't never done that. Exactly. Everybody who's ever got something and put it together, you had some leftover screws. You be like, where them screws come from? Oh, well, it's together now. We'll ride it till the wheels fall off. Yeah, the same thing you do in your life. And the issue is the mindset that you currently have created your current reality. And when you believe that you are going to fix it, those thick neural pathways that I talked about show up. And it feels very uncomfortable, very frustrating. You will even get angry. And then you say, you know what? I'll do this later. And you get mad. You feel a very heightened sense of anxiety. And all of that stuff exists because, and somebody put it in the chat earlier, in the comments earlier, your ego say, hey, wait a minute. We got this deal, me and you. We in this together. How you gonna talk about you want to be some? We gotta understand it, me and you. We've been doing this for the longest, and I'm content with where we are. But then you're over here like, I don't want to be that person no more. But ego, like, no, no, no. We gonna stick with what we know because it's been working for the last 20 or more years. So your ego is going to fight you for this thing that you're trying to do. And guess what? Unfortunately for you, your ego is going to win. It may not win 100% of it, but 95% is success. All it's trying to do is get you to quit doing the thing that you're currently doing. And here's the funny part about it. Look at what time of year it is. Do we see that happening every year right around this time? Gym memberships go through the roof. But wait about February. They'll go away. Oh, well, I got tired. I got a little, I did enough. I did enough. Yeah, ego won. The same thing. If you can see it in your physical behavior, that is enough evidence for you to recognize that, hey, I need some help. This is a lot more challenging than what I thought it was. And lo and behold, don't talk about what Gad was talking about previously. Don't talk about renewing your mind. Don't talk about overcoming the things that kept you stagnant for all of these years because you're trying to live according to his will, and you are still struggling trying to figure out what his will is, not just in general, but for your life. Because those two things matter. You just can't say, oh, well, I got what his will is and I'm good. No, because you need to understand what his will is for your life as well, because that's how you specifically get the opportunity to participate in his will. He has put an aspect of himself in each and every last one of us. He just didn't put the same aspect in us. So now it's your responsibility to figure out what that is. That's part of the dilemma. That's part of the struggle. And let's be honest, your flesh like doing this. Your flesh like, hunting and, shopping and doing all these other things. So I'm just saying, that's just kind of like my thoughts there, man. Any other, any other thoughts you want to add to it? Somebody go relieve Victor of his rights.
Welcome in, Victor.
No, welcome out.
Welcome out.
Any other thoughts?
Good part.
Any other thoughts pertaining to this?
Not. I'm going back and look at it. No, I like that. I think sometimes it can be challenging to kind of fix stuff. And I think one of the things, when it comes to just fixing anything in general is just the awareness that there's something that needs to be fixed. You know what I'm saying? And I think, with being on autopilot 95% of the time, it's like you're just going. So you're not always consciously aware about every single thing that may be going on, every single word that come out of your mouth. And that's why, someone said that they need to work on what is it? Impulsivity, impulse.
Ivity.
There you go. Appreciate it. I knew somebody was gonna hook me up. I was up there trying to find it. I don't know why I'm looking up there. The answer ain't up there, but
It was up there somewhere.
yeah, it is. But it's like, I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I'll see what time it is. Listen, I want to do a little something different. I believe you guys have already started working on your final thoughts, but I don't want to leave our audience without the end of this as well. So I want to begin the end of it, and then I'm just going to transition into our final thoughts. So let me first be obedient and let everybody know, like, again, this is our bittersweet moment, but it's time for us to transition into our final thoughts. We're going to do something different now. And You did good. You didn't do nothing wrong. So the last section is breaking the cycle through conscious identity shift. And I didn't share this with Nick. So like I said, you didn't do anything wrong. So breaking the cycle through conscious identity shift. Permanent transformation happens when we become conscious of our unconscious patterns and deliberately assume a new identity at the level of being, not just doing. Listen, if you're listening to me, this is not easy. I'm going to tell you the God honest truth. If you really digest and process this right here, this is a lot more extensive than your conscious mind can ever understand just at this level. However, Napoleon Hill told us this. He said, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Individuals with higher trait mindfulness show 35% greater functional connectivity in attention networks. Now, that being said, I want to ask this question, gentlemen, and if you can, I want you to rope it into your final thoughts. What would you share with someone in relation to the one thing they need to believe about themselves right now to naturally and effortlessly create the life they desire? I'll say it again. What would you share with someone in relation to the one thing they need to believe about themselves right now to naturally and effortlessly create the life they desire? Now, that being said, we're going to transition into our individual main stages, and we're going to start off with the great Uncle Junior.
I appreciate that. I really enjoyed the show. I really enjoyed everything that came out of it, all of the talking points, all of that. To leave you guys, in response to this question, what would I share with someone? I think one of the things that I would share with someone is that they need to believe that they can. I think a lot of times when you talk to people and you say, hey, someone is thinking about making a transition or evolve and or get better in a specific area in their life, and then you may be having a conversation and someone may say, well, hey, you should go out and do X, Y, and Z, or maybe you should get up at 4 o'clock, or maybe you should read an extra hour a day. And a lot of times what comes from that is some sort of hesitation. And I think sometimes the hesitation comes from the disbelief that they can achieve whatever it is that they are talking about, or that they may have said that they wanted to do. So someone may say, hey, I want to go and I want to lose 10 pounds. And then someone may say, hey, well, get up in the morning at 4 o'clock and just go for a walk. And they say, well, I can't get up at 4 o'clock. And I'm not saying you have to do those specific things, but I think what happens is there's that immediate hesitation. And then there's that thought process that says that I can't do that. And a lot of times I think that comes from the belief in their self, where they say, well, I can't get up at 4 o'clock. I don't get up to 8, So I think one of the things that I would say to somebody when it comes to one thing that I would share with someone in relation to one thing they need to believe about themselves right now to naturally and effortlessly create the life they desire is, number one, is believe, like really believe that you can achieve whatever it is thing that you said or you think that you may want to do. I think that's the big thing right there, because again, I don't think everybody who comes up with a goal automatically believes that they can do it. A lot of people 9 days ago wrote down and created vision boards and a lot of things. And then tomorrow, statistically, is January the 10th. And that's when a lot of people statistically stop, or they've already stopped, or like the last day of their New Year's resolution. So I think believing that you can continue it for a certain amount of time is just the start. Again, there's goals and plans and all those other things, but that's another conversation for another day. But believing in yourself and believing that you can do something is the one thing that I would share with someone about all of this. So, and that's my final thought.
Whew. And in response, the one thing you need to know about yourself is that, the first mindset change you need is to believe that you can. I brought up a scripture that we talk about we talk about a lot more often than I'm used to talking about. But when we brought it up on Friday or on Sunday, and he says, well, if you believe that there is one God, you have done well. But the addendum was devils believe and tremble. All right. So the belief is the starting point. But now let's start to put in action. The one thing you need to know about yourself is you have to start to believe. So I think the first mindset shift that needs to happen is what are the blockers keeping me from believing? And then I have to address those things first. Nothing else that I say after that, nothing else that Unc said, nothing else that coach is going to say matters if we don't deal with why I don't believe that I can. All right. Now, after I've done that, all right, I think it's important because I also believe if you see it, you can begin to achieve it, right? And so begin to write out where you're going, and then write out where you are, whichever order you want to write it, right? And I'm glad, Coach, you asked this question because it was right along the lines of what I was already writing. So look at, won't you do it? And then begin to lay out the behaviors and the mindsets that's keeping you where you are. And the next one sounds similar, but it's different. What are the mindsets that are keeping me from going forward? Because there's some mindsets that are the reason why you are where you are, but then there's some mindsets of why you can't move. We have to lay these out and address these. Then begin, and I'm gonna move because I don't want to hold you. So after I identify what are the mindsets that's keeping me from achieving, then what do I need? And what are the mindsets that I need? What do I need to learn? What do I need to know to begin to move forward to where the goal is? Because if I don't know where I'm going, that's why I'm writing that direction, where the end point to me is important. Because if I don't know where I'm going, Paul said this is one thing that I do, forgetting those things which are behind me, right? Getting rid of those things which are behind me and pressing towards that which is before me. Therefore, I press towards the mark of the prize of the high. But he knows where the mark is, of the prize of the high calling, which is in Christ. So it's laid out where I'm going. Now, what do I need to get there? Now, as I begin to understand and see the things that I need to get there, I have to now map out the plan, begin the work. And not only begin the work, some people tell you that's the hardest part, but here's the hardest part to me: endure it to the end. It's that simple to me. You got this. You know where you know what you want to go. And if you don't know, begin to pray about it. Begin to pray, because maybe it's not of the carnal work. Because I think sometimes we think we all got to have business goals. We all got to have career goals. Maybe you've gotten there already. But maybe it's not carnal. Maybe it's spiritual. Maybe I need to seek beyond myself to determine what that is and what that looks like. That's all I got.
Man, that was really good. I'm gonna start off by saying this. If you've been struggling with the same patterns showing up in your life, you're not broken. In fact, not even are you not broken, you're not even behind. You're simply experiencing what is, like we talked about, what is called mindset creep, and recognizing it is actually just the first step toward freedom. You have to come to the realization that you don't have limitations that the Father placed on you. That's where I will start at. Rid yourself of the perspective of your self-imposed limitations. I can't do this, and I can't do that, and I can't do this. The truth is, both science and scripture agree. Transformation is not only possible, but it's also your birthright. When the Bible said to be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, it's not giving you a suggestion. It's actually revealing a fundamental law that science now validates, which we talked about, which is called the law of consciousness. If anything you heard today that we discuss resonates with your spirit, I want to invite you. If you look in the upper corner of your screen right here, this little QR code right here, I want to invite you to a very special webinar that we're putting on. And this webinar that I'm hosting is called Unlocking Divine Provision Through Consciousness Transformation. I'll say it again, Unlocking Divine Provision Through Consciousness Transformation. And in this session, we'll go deeper into practical tools and biblical principles that can not only help you understand mindset creep, but also help you to break free from it. And you'll discover some particular concepts and techniques that has helped several people and create the lasting transformation that you're looking for. Now, I get it. I get it. You got all of the easy button things out there, and it sounds real good. And you know, we live in this microwave society to where we want to just set the timer, wait, and then voila, it's there. It doesn't happen that way. The Father created things to happen the way He created them, with a very intentional aspect of it. You cannot put old wine into new wineskin. So that being said, I just kind of want to land it right there because I think it's important. I think it's intentional that we actually look at these things and consider the things that we're supposed to be doing, going beyond myself, connecting with someone else over here and someone else over here and someone else over here. And then we can get into the aspect of existing to where we experience this thing called collective consciousness. And I leave that for a different conversation. So that being said, listen, we greatly appreciate you guys. Thank you for staying with us for an additional 10 minutes. We hope we didn't disappoint you, didn't bore you this evening, but we do value your time. So that being said, if you go watch the rest of the semifinal college football game, as always, we greatly appreciate you and value you. Remember, let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else, and we'll see you again next week, same time on the Hearts of Men.